The temperatures have finally cooled off. The leaves on the trees are starting to change, and it's finally feeling like fall. So I thought it would be fun to dig through my palette inventory and find the palettes that most remind me of this season. I thought I was only going to do 10, but I couldn't narrow it down. So you get 15. Let me address the objections right away. I know that you can use any palette you want at any time of the year. And if you live in a place where the seasons don't change, then there may not even be such a thing as a fall palette in your inventory. For me, I do kind of change the palettes that I use based on the season because I change my wardrobe based on the season. In the fall, I'm more likely to have deeper, richer colors, warm browns, russets, that kind of thing, than I am in the summer when I'm more likely to have pastels and reds and brights. And so it isn't necessarily that I'm changing my makeup to go with the season as I'm changing my makeup to go with my wardrobe. That does change based on the season because I live somewhere where it gets really cold and the leaves change colors and all of that. So yes, my fall and winter wardrobe is different than my spring and summer wardrobe, and therefore my makeup is different as well. That said, I do use all of these palettes all year round, but they just remind me of cozy fall sweaters, sitting by the fire, that kind of thing. In general, they tend to be deeper, warmer, a little spicy, jewel tones, earth tones, deep greens, foresty greens, kind of mustardy, pumpkiny, those kinds of shades. And you'll see that reflected in these palettes. All right, Tina, enough rambling. Show us the palettes. Coming in at number 15 is this Wet n Wild Color Icon 10 pan palette. And I seem to have gotten rid of the shade, but I believe it's Camouflaunt. And in general, I like this one because it's a little cooler toned than a lot of the palettes that I have in this kind of fall category, but it's still a little bit deep and smoky, and there's a little green in there. You've got these grays down here that if you just want to do a really traditional gray, black, smoky eye, you can do that with this. And in fact, I think I kind of want to play with that and do that one of these days. Number 15. Number 14 is this Rimmel Magnifies Jewel Rocks Edition palette, and it does have a brush in there, so I don't want to hold on to that. This one kind of reminds me of, I believe it was the Urban Decay Wild West palette. There's also a little bit of Naked Honey vibes in here. So you have these kind of mustardy green, a little bit of peachy tones in here, and even a little blue. So the jewel tones kind of that I was talking about, which, you know, makes sense since the name of it is Jewel Rocks. But this is a nice palette. One of the reasons this is down at number 14 is because it is an older palette in my inventory, and I'm just not quite sure if it is performing as well as it used to, but the shades are sure pretty. Coming in at number 13 is a classic, Love in London, and this one you can see has those warm kind of pumpkin-y colors and then some shimmers, and then there's also some berries over here, which I really also kind of like for fall, is like a deep wine raspberry kind of look. This one was one of the first palettes I bought when I got into the YouTube beauty space back in 2018, early 2019. And you can see that I have used it pretty heavy by the pan showing in those two lighter shades. Number 12 is the Alter Ego Sahara palette. This one is a dupe for one of the Natasha Denona palettes. I don't have it off the top of my head, so I will put it on the screen for you. This one I like because it not only has the warm shades over here, but there are also some cool tones here. So you could either do a cool kind of taupey look or more of a warm gold bronzy look, or you can even mix the cool and warm to get more neutral. This is one that I will reach for quite often in the fall. And you may notice as I go through this that some of these palettes have similar color stories, and you would be right. And it isn't necessarily that they give me a completely different look, but the formulas are different, the textures are different, and that's all part of the experience for me of using makeup, and I appreciate the variety. I'm also in the process of organizing my palettes, getting them listed in a spreadsheet so that I can do an inventory and declutter video. And even though I'm ranking these palettes in a top 15, and I do like all of them, when I do that declutter, I can't guarantee that all of these are going to get to stay. Coming in at number 11 is the Sigma Spicy palette, and I actually won this in Jen Phelps's 100,000 subscriber giveaway, and it was my very first Sigma palette that I've ever owned. I do really like the formula of this, and I like the shades as well. It's definitely a very basic warm tone neutral palette, and it gives a really pretty look on the eyes. And there is some variability in here because You could go with the bronzy shimmer or the more pinky gold shimmer, or you could do an all matte look as well. Coming in at number 10, another Sigma palette that I won in that giveaway, and this is the Sigma Untamed. This is one of the very few palettes that I've kept the shade saver on because it's so pretty. And I think the shades in here are simply gorgeous. I love the variety in here. You get everything from just a neutral to these purples, a pop of blue. There are these deep foresty greens with this green shimmer, and it just reminds me of fall. Coming in at number 9 is the Morphe X Ashley Strong palette. And this one, the packaging kind of bugs me. I don't like the way this opens like a book because then it's really, really long. But the shades are beautiful. And I like how it's kind of muted, but the shades all kind of work together. And again, you have these earthy tones, but then there's kind of these jewelish tones over here. Because even in the fall, when the leaves are changing, the evergreens are still a deep green. And so it's not just all reds and golds and oranges and yellows. Number 8 is the palette I used for my look today. And that is the Tarte Gilded palette. This one came out in a set, but I got this one in friend mail. It's a little hard to show on camera because the palette is so reflective, but the shades are stunning and the formula is fantastic. The top row has these berries and deep wines, and then you have a more gold row here, whereas this one has a little bit more bronze and rose gold in it. And the formula is great. This is their Amazonian clay formula, and I really, really enjoy this one. Number 7 is a Sydney Grace palette, and this is the Mountain Trail palette. I received this from my friend Katie over at Katie's Best Midlife, and this one is just yummy green grungy goodness. I love the tones in here. I have to be a little bit careful with the mustardy tones because they don't look great on my skin tone, but if I bring in a little bit more of a neutrally brown to kind of tone them down, then they do just fine. But these shimmers are just really, really pretty. I just received it not very long ago, and I'm excited to get some use out of it this fall because I just love those grungy green shades. Number 6 is this OPV Beauty Spotlight palette, and I'm sure that this is duping something, but I have no idea what it is. And it's just such a beautiful color story. It has these berries, but there's blue and greens and grays, and the shades are kind of shifty and fun and deep, and it's just so pretty. This purple is just perfect for fall. In the spring and summer, if I'm doing a purple look, I want something that's a little more vibrant and purple. But this more muted, kind of a grayish purple, oh, I just think it's so pretty. And while I don't really get along well with reds on my eyes, this is more of a berry red and then a brick red. So these I actually feel more comfortable using. And now for the top 5. Coming in at number 5 is the Hip Dot Witchy Warms palette. I got this in an Ipsy, and I just absolutely love this 9-pan palette. And I realize it's almost the same color story as like the Sigma Spicy and some others, but the reason that it is higher in the ranking is because it has everything I need to create a look all by itself. It has the light shade that I like to use to set from crease to brow bone. It has a couple of options for a transition shade, depending on if I want to go more in this bricky red or a mustardy brown bronzy kind of shade. And then it also has 2 deeper shades depending on which way you take the look, more into the brick red kind of shade or the pumpkiny orange bronzy kind of shade. I like that all of that is baked into one palette. Number 4 is the Alter Ego Artemis palette, and I realized that I should have looked up what these palettes do before I sat down, but I already had so many things that were keeping me from filming that I decided I would sit down and film while I had the time to do it, and then when I'm editing, I'll look it up and I'll let you know what it's duping down here. And part of it is because I don't really care what they're duping. I bought them because I like the color story and I like the price. The other thing is I can't use Natasha Denona shadows because she uses carmine in her formulation and I'm allergic to it. So I realize that there are people out there who don't like companies that dupe other people's color stories. I kind of get it. But on the other hand, I'm glad that there are companies out there who are doing these color stories and they're vegan so that I don't have to worry about that something that's in there is going to irritate my eyes. Anyway, back to this. This palette makes me think of a forested hillside in the fall. If you were going to go to Vermont or Colorado or somewhere to do a leaf tour or something, I feel like this is what you would see on that hillside. You would see the oranges and the corals, and there's even red in here, and golds, and yes, still green, and the blue of the sky. And I just kind of feel like all of the shades on that forested hillside are in this palette. And the formula is great. The shimmers are creamy and metallic. The mattes are blendable. The one thing I wish it had that it does not is that light shade that I use to set my eyeshadow primer. But that's why I keep a Wet n Wild Brulee on hand at all times. Number 3 is my Nomad Ghost Town palette. And I just got this last November. My husband bought it for me for an anniversary present. And I think it's just gorgeous. Almost dropped it. Okay. Whew. But again, I feel like a little bit of a broken record. You've got the browns, the blues, the greens, but in more muted tones. They're softened. They aren't bright and vibrant. I haven't figured out yet if my favorite formula is Nomad or Sydney Grace, but they're both up there. And this is a stunning palette. So that is number 3. Number 2 is Sydney Grace, and it is the Be Mine palette. And you might think, wait, that's a Valentine's palette. Well, maybe, but it also has these beautiful berry tones, and I don't always want to be orangey, pumpkin spice, that kind of thing in fall. Sometimes I want these raspberry kind of berry tones or a softer feminine pink sort of look. And so this palette can do that. It also could do a super deep smoky eye if you wanted to go there because it has this black shimmer. So pretty. It's a little bit intimidating to me, but like I said when I was showing that Wet n Wild palette, I kind of want to try it out. And if I don't like it, I can always wash it off, right? And now for the number 1 palette that makes me think of fall when I see it. It's a new palette in my inventory, and it is the Nomad Haunted Europe palette. This palette had been retired. It has been re-released for this season, and you can actually get 20% off if you buy it and the Ghost Town at the same time. But I understand that's a lot to spend on palettes. And these are special palettes to me because I don't typically spend this kind of money on palettes. I like spending $20 or less on palettes, and that's the majority of my inventory. Typically, my more expensive palettes have been gifts, or I've gotten them on sale, like I did this one at last year's Christmas in July sale. This one is a little bit different than the others in that there are brighter tones in here, but they're those rich jewel tones that just feel like fall. I've done a video reviewing this palette and doing a look, and I also did another look that I didn't film using more of the kind of orangey golds in it, and that was really pretty as well. So I'm having fun playing with it and getting to know the palette, and I'm looking forward to doing more looks with it. I have another palette on my desk that could have made the ranking, except that I haven't used it yet because I just got it. I do plan on doing a look with this. I think in October, I'd like to do like a Freaky Friday kind of series and do an eye look using a fall-inspired or Halloween-inspired palette. And this is going to be one of them. If you have a palette that you saw here or one that you have and you'd like to see if I have it, that you'd like to see me feature on a Freaky Friday in October, then let me know down in the comments below. Also, what do you think of my ranking? Would you rank them differently? Or let me know your favorite palette for fall. If you got this far, to let me know that you watched the whole thing, stick a leaf emoji down in the comments. I would like to thank you. And while you're down there, take a second and hit that thumbs up button. If you want to hang out with me a little bit more, check out that video. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye-bye.